Hello, my name is Danielle M. Jones,
And my name is Kelly Fitzpatrick.
and this is Interviews, an essential tool in executing leadership strategies.
We are going to start off the presentation by giving you the definition of an interview. We are then going to describe the types, formats, strategies, and stages of an interview. We will present to you a case study called Cabrini Homeowners Association that will be used to illustrate the different components of an interview. We will conclude the presentation by discussing how the interview is a valuable tool in leadership strategy. Please note in the description of this video, there are links to useful handouts. Please download or print them to guide you during this presentation.
What is an interview? Displayed on the screen, this is a commonly agreed upon definition from the American Heritage College Dictionary. Interviews are not only for seeking employment or promotion. Interviews can be used in a variety of situations to gain information, as well as making decisions. Examples of when interviews can be used include an instructor gaining feedback from individuals completing a training on new software, staffers in the mall asking shoppers to participate in a survey, and a professor conversing with students about the workload in a class. The type, format, structure, and formality can vary based on the circumstances of the situation and the environment the interview will be conducted in. Interviews are considered to be a more formal and structured type of dialogue in comparison to most conversations. The interviewer has an element of control over the interview and uses it to obtain specific information along with directing the flow of conversation. In most informal conversations, both parties are speaking an equal amount, whereas in interviews, the distribution is approximately 70% interviewee and 30% interviewer, respectively. When addressing a situation or problem, the leader may need to implement a leadership strategy to help achieve the desired outcomes. A valuable tool in implementing a leadership strategy is to conduct an interview.
Listed here are the different types and formats of interviews. An employment or selection interview is designed to judge the candidate's qualifications and desirability for a job. Performance appraisal interviews, which are usually conducted by a supervisor, are designed to discuss the quality of the subordinate's work or performance. Disciplinary interviews are designed to address and deal with misconduct and poor performance. Exit interviews are designed when an employee is leaving an organization as well as to solicit feedback on potential problems. Diagnostic interviews are designed for professionals to collect information on their patients' or clients' needs. Investigative interviews are designed to discover the causes of an incident or problem. And finally, research interviews are designed to gather data and information which serves as the basis for decision making. One type of research interview is a survey interview, which is designed to collect information from a number of people to understand, help make conclusions, interpretations, or deciding future actions for a target audience. Leaders are now going beyond the traditional one-on-one interview since it's become predictable and candidates can be coached through it. Instead, they are trying new structures to attempt to gain a truer picture of the individual. Face-to-face and one-on-one, the traditional interview is still the most common type of interview. In regards to a technological interview, sometimes a potential employer may interview you through phone, email, or even instant message. A panel interview is interviewing with more than one person. They are used to see how long you'll get well with certain employees and if you'll fit in. A working interview entails actually working and performing the tasks you will be expected to perform if you get the position. A stress interview is meant to test if you can handle the stress of the job. They are mostly used for positions that are typically more stressful in nature, such as sales, management, or customer service. The interviewer may ask the same questions repeatedly or be sarcastic or disagreeable. All of these things are meant to see if you can remain calm, keep a sense of humor, and avoid becoming defensive in certain situations. A behavioral interview is meant to glean information on past behavior. They may ask you things such as, tell me about a time when you used logic and good judgment to solve a problem. A situational interview is meant to glean information on how you solve problems. You may get questions such as, how would you deal with an angry customer or coworker?
The amount of preparation and planning completed before the interview takes place can have a significant impact on the interview's success or failure. Thus, both the interviewer and interviewee should take the necessary steps to get ready for the upcoming interview. Thorough planning before the interview by both parties will ensure a more successful outcome from the interview. When planning for the interview, a goal should be defined and made clear. Both the interviewer and interviewee must be precise when expressing their expectations for the interview. The interviewer must know what type of interview he or she will conduct and ensure that the goals align with the purpose in their interview. The interviewee also needs to make his or her goals clear as well. As an example, if the interviewee is participating in a selection interview, an explicit goal would be to persuade the interviewer that he or she is the best candidate suited for the available position. After defining the goals and expectations of the interview, identify and analyze the other party. Having access to individuals who can provide beneficial information in regards to the interview will help make the conversation productive and advantageous to both parties. While gathering background information on the other party, one should prepare a list of topics to help accomplish the goals of the interview. The topics will help an individual gather the necessary information, keeping both parties focused on the interview. A structured interview consists of a standardized list of questions that allow limited answers with no follow-up. The strengths of a structured interview is that it is efficient in time, it limits the bias and subjectivity of the interviewer, and the interviewer controls the format and topics, making it easier to analyze. An unstructured interview has a goal in mind, but there's not a list of specific questions. It is more flexible and allows the information to flow in whatever direction seems most productive. The advantage of an unstructured interview is that they do not restrict the questions that can be asked in comparison to a structured interview. The moderately structured interview is flexible, with open-ended questions and the chance to explore issues that might arise spontaneously. The structure of the interview may influence the type of questions asked. Interview questions can be primary or secondary, open or closed, factual or opinion-based, direct or indirect, hypothetical or critical incident. The type of interview questions asked by the interviewer will determine if he or she will gain the necessary information from the conversation. The interviewer must be cognizant in not using leading questions because they may appear to address legitimate concerns, but they can be potentially discriminating and offensive. Please refer to the handout on the types of questions that are potentially asked during an interview. The setting of the interview is also a critical part of planning. The location of the interview should have minimal to no distractions. It is recommended to hold the interview in a neutral setting. People are more likely to speak freely and think creatively in a neutral space rather than in a familiar setting. Other aspects to consider in the physical setting of the interview includes the degree of formality, the time of the interview, and the physical distance between the interviewer and the interviewee.
There are 3 stages of an interview: an opening, body, and closing. The opening of an interview should have a greeting along with an introduction from the interviewer. Depending on the circumstances of the interview, it is appropriate to build rapport by engaging in small talk. The orientation gives the interviewee a brief synopsis of what will occur during the interview. It is important to explain the reason for the interview, what information is needed, how the necessary information will be used, and establish any ground rules and give an approximate length of the interview. The interviewer's responsibilities include control and focus the conversation, listen actively, and use secondary questions to probe for important information. The interviewee's responsibilities include listen actively and give clear, detailed answers, answer the questions posed by the interviewer, and correct any misunderstandings and cover their own agenda. In the closing of an interview, either the interviewer or interviewee can review and clarify the results, establish future actions, and conclude with pleasantries. The formality and directness of the closing depends on the person's role in the interview. The interviewer is more likely to be straightforward and direct with the closing, and the interviewee is not discouraged for taking the lead with the closing. The interviewee can engage in clarification and establishing future actions by asking questions to summarize the interview. Now we have a case study called Cabrini Homeowners Association. Taylor, a property manager of Cabrini Homeowners Association, and Susan, a staff accountant, are working together to finalize details on the association's 2014 fiscal year budget. Susan has been newly assigned to the property, and Taylor has only been the property manager for 6 months. The HOA is currently low in funds in both the operating and reserves account. The board of directors is faced with the possibility of raising the monthly association fees and may need to have a special assessment to fund required necessary repairs and maintenance. Taylor and Susan agree to get together and have a meeting on how to effectively accomplish tasks necessary to have the proposed budget ready for the board vote within 4 weeks.
Displayed on the screen are 5 scenarios. Can you name the type of interviews used in these scenarios? The first scenario is considered a research interview because Susan is looking to gain more insight from Taylor about the community in general, along with collecting information to effectively plan the next 4 weeks accordingly to complete the proposed budget on time. The second scenario is a survey interview because Taylor wants to understand the concerns and needs of her target audience, the association's members. This third scenario is an investigative interview. Susan will be able to better understand the financial issues and patterns leading up to the association's current fiscal health by speaking with the prior staff accountant. The fourth scenario is a selection interview. Due to the fact that the property manager and the board of directors meet on a monthly basis, but the board has final approval on the financial decisions, Taylor wants to see how well the candidates and her can work together and collaborate. The last scenario is a performance appraisal interview because it is being used by both Taylor and Susan to hold each other accountable as well as address any concerns or issues with either party's work performance.
Interviewing and leadership strategy. Your leadership style correlates with your personal philosophy of leadership. McGregor proposes the XY theory, which are 2 broad perspectives on how managers view managing their employees. Theory X has 3 assumptions. 1, people dislike work. 2, people need to be directed and controlled. And 3, people desire security instead of responsibility. Thus, managers who align with Theory X are more likely to believe that their workers will be careless, lackadaisical, and unmotivated without strong leadership. Rewards and punishments are used as external motivation to influence workers to complete and accomplish tasks. In comparison, Theory Y's assumptions are that 1, people like to work. 2, people are self-motivated. And 3, people accept and seek out responsibility. Theory Y managers believe in supporting their workers, not controlling them. The goal is for managers to discover their passion and accept new responsibilities. The leadership style will be influenced by an individual's philosophy of leadership. Goldman describes 6 styles of leadership that can be utilized by a leader at any time, depending on the environment or situation. A visionary leader is looking to take the organization in a new direction, so they could use diagnostic interviews to understand the expectations of the employees, stakeholders, and customers, and where they want to see the organization go in the future. He or she could also use investigative interviews to determine why the old direction wasn't working and why the problems occurred. A coaching leader could use performance appraisal interviews with their employees, giving guidance to improve or maintain performance, addressing strengths and weaknesses. Affiliative leaders' main concern is maintaining harmony and teamwork among staff, so when conducting an employment interview, the leader may need to use panel interviews to determine how the candidates will work with the rest of the staff. A democratic leader utilizes knowledge and skills to accomplish goals. Research and survey interviews can be used to collect data from individuals on certain issues requiring input. Investigative interviews may also be used to obtain opinions and advice from individuals. Next is pace setting. When conducting an interview, pace setting leaders are going to be looking for people that can work at a certain pace. Working or stress interviews may be used to get a good idea of how an individual will perform and work under pressure. Disciplinary interviews may also be used when someone is not performing at the appropriate pace. And lastly, commanding. This is classic model of military-style leadership. A commanding leader would use disciplinary interviews to reprimand any misconduct and relay any criticism on behavior of employees.
Murray proposes that an effective leader must be flexible to the needs of the individuals and organization, not focusing on his or her personal leadership needs. In being willing to adapt to the circumstances, environment, or the needs of the workers, an effective leader will be able to establish a strong organizational culture as well as a leadership strategy. A leadership strategy provides the image and path for the success of the organization as well as a framework on how the group will accomplish its set goals. Passmore believes that there are 5 components that must be assessed before implementing such a leadership strategy. How many leaders are needed? What qualities are needed in the selected leaders, such as experience or demographics? The desired skills and behaviors needed for execution of the strategy, the shared capabilities of the leaders when working together, such as problem solving or developing new talent, and creating and maintaining a desired organizational culture. Understanding your leadership philosophy will help you realize your preferred style of leadership. This will help you develop an effective leadership strategy to accomplish the goals and tasks set forth in your organization. Before interviewing individuals, you should have a firm grasp of your views on motivation and attitudes toward work. We encourage you to complete this self-assessment developed by Chapman to recognize your personal philosophy of leadership. Knowing your leadership philosophy will be beneficial to deciding on which leadership style you will practice, which will then guide you on which individuals you will select to help carry out the directives assigned to you. Regardless of the interview type, they share common characteristics. They involve 2 parties, it has a purpose, and the focus is on asking and answering questions.
There are 3 stages of an interview: an opening, body, and closing. Interviews can be structured, unstructured, or moderately structured. Effective and successful interviews require planning and preparation from both the interviewer and interviewee.
An individual's philosophy on leadership influences their style of leadership. In turn, the leadership style will impact how a leadership strategy is developed and executed for a group or organization.
Individuals will structure and approach interviews to accomplish specific tasks, projects, and goals based on their leadership strategy.
To implement a leadership strategy in a group or organization, interviews are an important tool to recruit the right individuals to help accomplish directives and goals.